You're watching the Isaiah Factor Uncensored.
And welcome back to the Factor Uncensored, the second half this hour. Now, we've been dealing with COVID for more than 2 years now. You guys know how it is. And in that time, the restaurant industry has taken a beating. The U.S. Restaurant Association reports 14% of restaurants closed for good, permanently, no longer in existence. And if you think that's just because things are looking good right now, you're wrong. Businesses are still trying to bounce back from that mess. A $55 billion relief package may help you. Take a look.
They're still struggling out there. I think a lot of people forgot about that. The bills from 2 years ago don't just disappear. They're saddled on your back until you get rid of them.
Yes, sir. And that's one of the things that we talked about before, is this idea that the sooner Congress had acted, the better it would have been, because these restaurants were establishing lines of credit that they were unable to pay. They were in debt to their suppliers or vendors. And so even if they were being given a grace period from certain vendors for 30 to 60 days, at a certain point, as you said, you have to pay that back. And with the American Rescue Plan, the $28+ billion that was allocated for this specific industry ran out in a couple of months. So it opened in May, and by July, fewer than a third of the applicants were actually awarded the funding. So we needed to replenish the fund for those applications that were still outstanding from 2021.
Now, the House passed a bill yesterday, the $55 billion bill, to replenish that fund, but now we have to wait on the Senate, right?
Well, the Senate is of course going to have their separate appropriations committee, but this should be moved forward relatively quickly, and so it'll be enacted. And then we'll have to really wait on the Small Business Administration. So the AAA, of course, is authorization, allocation, and appropriation. And so once we have these appropriations, and again, why didn't Congress just make this an indefinite to meet a need as opposed to a finite dollar amount? I don't know. But once the Senate has this in place, I believe we're going to see the Small Business Administration having to go through. They've also allocated $30 million for the Small Business Office of Inspector General to investigate fraud claims, because we saw rampant fraud with all this money out there, up to $5 million per site, up to $10 million per non-publicly traded entity. So McDonald's wasn't eligible, BJ's Brewery wasn't eligible. Just for small businesses, we still had certain procedural delays and technical difficulties where these claims were backlogged.
If all goes as planned, how soon can small businesses that qualify get this money, or at least apply?
You should have existing applications that then the Small Business Administration would reach out to you and say, okay, this was in process, please submit additional documentation proving that you're still incorporated, that you haven't filed bankruptcy or otherwise gone out of business. And so if all those forms are in order and if everything goes perfectly, probably in the next month, these businesses should start seeing the direct deposits, because the infrastructure is already in place. So some of those errors that we saw where a bank would code something as a savings account when it was supposed to be a checking account and then send those funds back to the SBA, and then the SBA is spending it somewhere else and doesn't have the budget. So the bank account's empty, and now those businesses have to reapply. Those errors have now been corrected. The infrastructure is in place to more quickly process those claims, hopefully within by the end of May.
Now, what type of businesses are we talking about? Are we talking about restaurants only? Are we talking about bars? What do you know, which businesses would qualify under this $55 billion plan?
The same businesses that were sort of pre-qualified in the prior plan, because this is just an influx of money to address the funding that was expended and then not replenished. So restaurants, bars, taverns, any place that has around 35% of its business on site related to food or beverage distribution, that they can apply and be eligible so long as they're not a publicly traded company. So this is a very broad group. If you serve beer primarily, but on site, or if you serve food primarily on site, you would then be eligible if you weren't publicly traded.
And of course, I guess the people involved would have to just keep their eyes and ears open once Congress finally sets this in stone, and then they can go after those dollars. But you said it would likely be through the SBA, right?
The Small Business Administration is that authorized entity to manage these funds, and so they should be continuing. particularly with their express purpose. So we know the federal court didn't allow the SBA to do any preferential treatment as we expected Congress through their intent for minority businesses, particularly women-owned businesses or other typically harder hit businesses by COVID. So the research said certain businesses, historically underutilized businesses and so forth, were harder hit. Congress tried to allow the SBA that discretion for priority applications to those hardest hit businesses, and a federal judge said no. So some of those things have now been worked out, and the SBA is, of course, going to be able to move a little bit quicker.
All righty. Dr. Dietrich von Biedenfeld from the University of Houston downtown, we always appreciate your expertise and thank you for your time, sir.